Clarkson, in writing in The Sun earlier this month, said, "I'm becoming more and more convinced that Starmer and Reeves have a sinister plan. They want to carpet bomb our farmland with new towns for immigrants and net zero wind farms. But before they can do that, they have to ethnically cleanse the countryside of farmers."
Interesting. Do you have to be a certain ethnicity to be a farmer?
Yeah.
Yes! This is like Telegraph lorem ipsum.
Yeah.
It's so good. Carpet bomb our farmland with illegal immigrants and wind farms. They want to ethnically cleanse the countryside of farmers.
Yeah,
this is like a bit I would do on the like 2 years. Like he really wrote this.
Yeah, he
just wrote that down. Like that sentence he was just like, yeah, they're gonna carpet bomb the countryside with illegal immigrants and wind farms to ethnically cleanse it of farmers.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I just needed to check really that's a real sentence that Jeremy Clarkson wrote.
That's in quotes.
Yeah, the most oppressed group of all, the farmers.
You know what else, right? This is the obvious similarities are to, again, like petty bourgeois uprisings in like failing global North states. I mean, January 6th, an obvious one. The Canadian truckers, another obvious one. Also, like the Canadian truckers, most of those people weren't truckers. They were guys who lived in suburbs and drove very large pickup trucks. That's who was doing donuts outside of like, the Second Cup in Ottawa.
Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah, well, we need this sort of like unwieldy alliance between Jeremy Clarkson and Range Rover Mum.
Yeah.
Which,
Pretty wieldy. And moreover, okay, well, where are the other farmer protests happening? It's the Netherlands and Germany, and it tends to be, again, against like the green agenda, whatever. Right. And in the Netherlands, actually, it also was about the attacks on farming.
Yeah, and specifically as well, it's like this performance of being very, very angry at immigrants. It's like, where do you get all of your labor from? But also being triggered by wind farms. Wind farms, which are as close as you can get practically to free money. A thing farmers also love. You put it up and it just makes money out of the fucking air.
Yeah.
Make like absolutely shits
And you
all
can
over
still grow crops
as a
around
passive
it.
income.
Well,
exactly.
This is where I go back to the center left has failed to engage with climate change at all, and the right is engaging with it effectively. Right? But they're doing that by accepting that things are happening and things must be done directly and urgently. Now, it happens that because they're the right, the things that are happening are immigrants and wind farms but also inflation. Right? They recognize that all of these things are happening and have to be dealt with like quite ferociously and imminently, and because they're the right, also they're like, okay, well, kick him out, arrest him, tear him down, act, use the power of the state to act.
Yeah,
right.
We can't do that though.
But that's why the right is so much better, right, at responding to climate change than the center, right? Because the center is continuing to try to treat this real material thing that people are experiencing. And again, the right is not saying doing it like in a good way. They're just doing it effectively. They are mobilizing a cohort of supporters around urgent and material action that must be taken. Whereas the center left is saying this will be done managerially. We'll build a wind farm that may reduce your electricity bills in 3 years. It will be mostly owned by BlackRock. And, in the meantime, don't worry about all of the stuff that's happening. Don't worry about how olive oil costs twice as much as it used to because all of the crops failed in like Spain and Italy. Don't worry about that.
Oh, that's because of like them having too many wind farms.
Yeah. It's pretty cool though to be like a guy in the Netherlands who owns a bunch of low-lying agricultural land in the Netherlands and be like, what's the deal with this climate change? You're building too many wind farms.
Yeah.
That's my main concern about all this low-lying farmland that I own in the Netherlands.
But that just speaks to how good they are at organizing them.
Yeah.
That speaks to how good they are at organizing these people.
Because they're gentry, because they're like bourgeois, their interests like overlap until they catastrophically don't, right? And you're never going to make them see otherwise.
Jeeps van der Blomkin speaking from his farm in Atlantis.
Yeah. Well, Jeeps van der Blomkin actually bought that farm for because he made so much money on Twunkel that he actually
but like,
wanted to inherit it.
we see what happens when these people actually are displaced by some disaster or another, which is it just glides off the surface of their brain. They can lose absolutely everything, and it will, they'll still be like, climate change is a perfectly natural phenomenon. This is the fault of immigrants or whatever.
Well, of course. And so but that's what good political organization or effective political political organization around a kind of
good political organization because we like it and we approve of it, obviously.
But that's what effective political organization around a kind of atavistic reactionary impulse looks like. It's effective, and that's why I worry about the farmer protests here. That's effective political mobilization that's being tied to a party line that's being opposed by nobody.
Not a fan of right-wing political action, but that is class.
Yeah. And also, right, this is from DSMOG. A lot of these groups then, again, are connected with GB News. They're connected with like the UK version of the Heartland Institute, who are also saying, farmers are the only things that stand between us and the World Economic Forum's desire for us to eat bugs, own nothing, and be happy about it. And again, it's like, well, what's this really a pushback against? It's a pushback politically against managerialism, or to say we want our like more decisive, courageous, fast, hard acting manager in place who will use power for us. Right? Because it's, who do these people really hate? They always talk about HR bureaucrats. They talk about, pointy-headed, sort of stuffy liberals, whatever. And like then, minorities, young people, left-wingers, and so on. And if this goes back to Elon Musk as well, it's like, no, he's a billionaire. He's powerful. He will crush the HR department that's peppering the countryside with wind farms. And also, who's supporting this, right? Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage saying in every market town in the country, there should be protests, and warned these policies could cost Labour 100 seats in government. The party now has more than 100,000 members. More than 100,000 members in like 6 months.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
It will soon overtake membership of the Conservative Party.
Good stuff.
Great.
Great.
Because you know what that looks like to me? That looks like a party that is, if not speaking to people's material concerns as they are, at least speaking to how angry they are with how things are. And then, wouldn't you know it, we had the opportunity, of course, to do that.
And to be clear, these are the people who are allowed to get angry, and these are the things that they're allowed to get angry about, right? Yeah. You can't get angry about, the fact that rent is completely unaffordable. You can't get angry about there being shit in all the rivers. You can't get angry about, like, the police killing people with no repercussions. What you are allowed to get angry about is your tax assets being stripped away from you. Or you are allowed to get angry about the presence of migrants. And, then if you actively riot, then some of you might get sent to prison, but then the rest of the discourse will be about conceding to everything you want, right? There's a very stark divide there.
Well, it goes back to something you said a while ago that I always think about, which is all we're allowed to do is the impossible, right? All you are allowed to consider is the ludicrous. The thing that gets taken very seriously as a political point now that everything else must Geelong around is this.
We've got to Geelongify our politics.
This wild story about an inheritance tax change, meaning that small farms in Britain are no longer going to be owned by octogenarian hobbyists who want to give their children a tax-free inheritance. They're all going to be owned by BlackRock. And again, we do know that like when small assets go down in value and can't be maintained by their owners, they do tend to be consolidated by like large businesses. We know that BlackRock did that with houses in the States.
Yeah, it's like, oh, boo-hoo, did someone get addicted to free money? I'm sorry, your like great-great-grandfather enclosed this land and now Monsanto owns it. I don't think they'll be good either, but fuck both of you.
Yeah, and and of course, you know who Keir Starmer is courting the approval of? BlackRock, the subject of the fucking conspiracy. Anyway, what I go back to is what's allowed to be taken seriously is this ludicrous story that Jeremy Clarkson is telling, which everyone has to say because the only people who are allowed to be taken seriously because it is obvious things are failing, and it's obvious that there's going to be anti-system feeling in the face of a failing system, but the most, I guess you could say, mass palatable version of that to the elites, the like columnist elites, the political elites, whoever you want to call them, who decide which opinions are to be taken seriously, is the most ludicrous story, because this seems to be taken more seriously than the fact that there's poo in all the river. Because that's a very simple, fact-based, materially driven story of water companies are not investing sufficiently. They're not investing sufficiently because they haven't been incentivized over years to pay out dividends to their shareholders instead of building pipes and maintaining pipe. Therefore, the pipes are breaking, therefore shit in river. That's a very simple material story, A, B, C. There is a set of incentives that have incentivized the owners of assets to handle it poorly. The story that's allowed to be taken very seriously, that politics is pivoting around, it seems, is Jeremy Clarkson's mad Davos fantasy that that fucking Rachel Reeves is trying to do the great replacement on farmers who've been working the land for over a dozen years since Cameron brought the tax change in. Basically, that's the story that's allowed to get taken seriously. That's who's allowed airtime.
I love the British press. It's a cool place to be. Although Jeremy Clarkson's mad Davos fantasy does conjure the image of a kind of horrifying slash fiction that Jeremy Clarkson has written about, but getting fucked by a Dalek.
It sounds like a DVD that you pull out of a bargain bin. It's like him like sliding a Koenigsegg sideways around like a town in Davos.
Yeah.